Do you know what it feels like to stare into a mirror and not recognize your own life? To know something is wrong, but have no words for it? My name is Caroline, and my siblings paid a private clinic to erase my memories, so I'd forget that I was the only one our father left everything to. And for 5 years, I believed I was the broken one. You ever wake up from a nap and feel like something's off, but you can't put your finger on it? Now imagine that feeling lasting 5 years. That was my life. 5 whole years of foggy mornings, random gaps, and this gnawing emptiness I couldn't name. My name is Caroline Wright, and I'm 39 years old. I used to be Sharpie top of my class, a chess champion in college, the one who remembered every birthday in the family. But one day, I simply stopped remembering. Or rather, they made sure I did. It started after our father died, Arthur Wright. A stern man, but fair. A self-made businessman with very specific wishes about his estate. I remember him sitting me down, 2 weeks before his death, and saying, "Caroline, I've left it all to you. They don't care for the company. You do. You always have." I cried. He kissed my forehead. That's one of the last real memories I had, until I didn't. The day after his funeral, my world cracked open. I was taken to a clinic in Switzerland. They told me I'd had a complete mental breakdown from grief. That I was showing signs of severe cognitive trauma. That I was suicidal and had begged to forget. That's what they told me. That's what my brothers, Paul and Victor, and my sister Evelyn told the world too. Photos of me curled up in a chair. Videos of me sobbing nonsense. Signed consent forms. But here's the thing, I don't remember ever signing them. Because I didn't. For years, I lived quietly. I stayed in a cottage they owned. I had nurses. I took pills. They told me I had no job. No company. That I'd given it all up. And I believed them. Because when someone takes away your past, the present becomes a prison you don't know how to escape. But karma, oh, karma has a cruel sense of humor. 2 months ago, I slipped on my icy porch steps. Hit the back of my head. Nothing major, just a mild concussion. But then the nightmares started. Or were they memories? Dad's voice. The will. The keys to his safe. A name, Lila Langston, his old lawyer. The smell of pipe tobacco. The exact shade of his signature Mont Blanc pen. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I acted confused. I told my siblings I was having relapses. That I needed help accessing old memories. And suddenly, they panicked. Paul flew in from Dubai. Evelyn scheduled a private MRI. Victor started checking in every day, acting concerned. That's when I knew they were scared of what I might remember. So I decided to play dumb and let them walk themselves straight into the fire. I contacted Lila Langston myself. She cried when she saw me. Said she thought I was dead. That my siblings told the firm I'd been institutionalized and never recovered. But when I said, "Wasn't there a will?" Her face froze. She pulled it from her files. My name. Sole heir. Dated, notarized, witnessed. Untouched. Then she handed me the last gift Dad left, a USB drive. On it? Video footage of him recording his final wishes. He looked straight into the camera and said, "If you're seeing this, Caroline, it means they tried to steal what's yours. Fight them. With everything you've got." I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I waited. Quietly. See, they had filed a forged will in court, one splitting everything equally. And they were in the middle of a probate hearing to finalize it. Public hearing. Media was already covering it because of our father's status. So I told Lila, "Let's go cinematic." I walked into court that morning dressed in pale blue, with a blank look. I brought tissues. I wore soft shoes. I sat quietly as they testified about my fragile state. Paul talked about how I gave up my shares because I couldn't handle the stress. Evelyn cried about how she'd taken care of me for years. Victor smirked when the judge nodded sympathetically. And then, Lila stood up. Your Honor, with the court's permission, my client would like to submit new evidence. And show a video. They laughed at first. Until the screen turned on. And there he was, Arthur Wright, in his library, dated 3 days before his death, speaking loud and clear. The room went silent. You could hear Evelyn's breathing get sharp. Paul stood. Victor tried to say it was fake. But then Lila pulled out my signed version. With 2 verified witnesses, including the family notary. My DNA was even on the seal. The judge stared at them. Hard. You committed fraud, he said. And you used mental health as your weapon. They tried to interrupt. But the best part? This was the first day court was open to the press. The trial had been live-streamed. Thousands were watching. Comments flooded in. Headlines changed in real time. Siblings erased woman's memories to steal fortune trended within hours. Their reputations? Ruined. The will? Enforced. Me? I walked out of that courtroom with everything. But the best revenge? Was looking into their eyes, as they realized the sister they buried wasn't just alive, she remembered everything. And she played them all. If you've ever been betrayed by family, the ones meant to protect you, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel, because the next chapter is where things really twist. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that morning, staring at my reflection like I was meeting myself for the first time. For 5 years, I lived inside a story someone else wrote for me. A woman who forgot. A woman who broke. But that morning, I knew exactly who I was. Caroline Wright. Sole heir to Arthur Wright's entire empire. And the daughter who was about to end her siblings in court, with a smile on her face. I wore blue on purpose. Soft, innocent, forget-me-not blue. Evelyn always said I looked most vulnerable in it. She used to dress me like that when visitors came to the cottage, made me wear slippers and soft cardigans and told people I was delicate. That morning, I chose to be their delicate little puppet one last time. I even faked a tremble as I entered the courtroom. People looked at me like I was tragic. Lost. Quiet. But inside, I was razor sharp. Waiting. Watching. The courtroom smelled like old wood and lies. Paul was already seated, tapping something into his phone. Victor had his sleeves rolled up, trying to look responsible. Evelyn dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, like she hadn't spent years gaslighting me. They saw me come in, and all 3 stood, almost like instinct. Like they were checking that I was still under their thumb. Paul leaned down. You okay, Caro? You nervous? I nodded. I don't really remember what's happening, but I trust you. His smile twitched. Victor patted my back. Evelyn gave me her classic crocodile tear hug. And that's when I knew they didn't suspect a thing. The judge was a sharp woman in her 60s with silver hair tied in a bun. She asked for opening remarks. Their lawyer, a slick guy named Granger, stood up and painted a very touching picture of a grieving family managing their late father's estate after the tragic mental collapse of the youngest daughter. He called me a gentle soul, who relinquished all burdens during a time of darkness. Evelyn even wept when he said that. Then it was Lila Langston's turn. She stood up, calm and cool, and said, Your Honor, we respectfully contest the will currently under review, and seek to present newly uncovered documents and video testimony from Mr. Arthur Wright himself. The moment she said those words, the entire row in front of me stiffened. Paul turned his head, just slightly. Evelyn blinked too quickly. Victor's jaw twitched. What new documents? Their lawyer asked, trying to laugh it off. Lila held up the sealed envelope. A signed and notarized version of Mr. Wright's original will, leaving 100% of the estate to Caroline Wright, dated 5 days before the one submitted by the family. And the video, the judge asked. Layla nodded. It's from Arthur Wright's private study. We verified the metadata and timestamp. We also have handwriting samples, his personal seal, and 2 witnesses from the notary firm. And one more thing. The footage includes a direct warning to Caroline about possible fraud by family members. The courtroom went dead silent. I didn't move. The judge motioned for the video to be played. And then he appeared, my father. Looking directly into the lens, eyes glassy but voice strong. If you're watching this, Caroline, it means the others tried to bury you. But I know you. You don't stay buried for long. Evelyn's mouth parted. Paul muttered something under his breath. Victor shook his head slowly like he was watching his future shatter in real time. The video ended. Lila calmly placed the physical documents on the bench. Their lawyer stammered about authenticity and mental state, but the judge had already seen enough. She leaned forward and asked me directly, Miss Wright, were you aware of this inheritance prior to your treatment? I took a long breath. Yes, Your Honor. But I was told I was hallucinating. That I made it up. That I was ill. I trusted my family, and they used my trust to erase the truth. There was a collective gasp in the gallery. Someone actually dropped their coffee. And when did you regain your memory? I smiled. About 2 months ago. The judge raised a brow. And you didn't say anything until now? No, ma'am. I wanted them to show who they really are. In front of you. And everyone watching. Because, oh yes, by then, word had spread. Reporters were outside. The stream had gone viral. The name Wright family inheritance trial was trending. The judge turned to my siblings. Given the severity of this deception, and the existence of both hard evidence and premeditated suppression of a legitimate will, this court will not only reinstate the original document, but refer this matter to criminal fraud investigators. Paul stood up and shouted something about me being unstable. Evelyn burst into tears and tried to faint. Victor called his lawyer useless and stormed out. Me? I just sat there. Quiet. Victorious. Do you want to know the strangest part? It wasn't the memory loss. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was how easily they lied. How quickly they adapted the story. Even after the courtroom chaos, after my father's video, after the judge shut down their fake will like it was a joke, they still acted like they were the victims. I stepped out of that courthouse into a wall of flashing cameras. Microphones shoved at my mouth. Caroline, did you know about the original will? Did your siblings really erase your memories? What happens now? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I let Lila guide me into the car, my face calm. Because inside, I wasn't just relieved, I was furious. And that fury was going to be useful. That night, Paul called me. I stared at the phone buzzing in my hand, his name lighting up the screen like it hadn't in 5 years. My thumb hovered over the red button. But instead, I picked up. Caro, he said, voice low and careful, like I was a bomb that might go off. Look, we all made mistakes. Evelyn was just trying to protect you. Victor didn't even know about the treatment details. And me? I was scared. You weren't okay. You were hallucinating. Was I? I said. Or were you scared I remembered the truth? He paused. Then, in the most manipulative tone I've ever heard, he said, you're not going to press charges, right? I mean, we're still family. Family. The word made me physically sick. I ended the call without a word. And that's when I made the final decision, I wasn't just going to expose them in court. I was going to destroy everything they built off my father's name. And guess what? They handed me the tools themselves. See, I wasn't completely helpless all those years. I may not have remembered the inheritance, but I had been documenting things. Journals. Scribbles. Voice notes I didn't understand at the time. Every time I had a nightmare or a flash, I'd write it down. I thought I was going crazy, but in truth, I was preserving the evidence of my own sabotage. With Lila's help, we started digging. Every lie. Every dollar they moved. Every account they funneled money from my father's trust into, under the assumption I was in care. Fake caretaker contracts. Inflated expenses. Evelyn even forged my signature on a deed to sell one of my father's properties. Paul rerouted company dividends into shell accounts. Victor? He'd been charging the estate monthly emotional compensation for helping with my recovery. $1,000 per hour. Lila looked at the files and said, "They're not just liars. They're criminals." The best part? They documented everything. Because greedy people are stupid. They want to keep track of their own brilliance. I found emails they sent each other, calling me the vegetable, saying things like "she'll never know," and "we can always claim we saved her." Screenshots. Audits. Surveillance footage from the clinic. Turns out, the so-called experimental therapy wasn't so experimental, it was illegal. Memory disruption drugs banned in half the EU. Paid under the table. Administered without proper consent. One doctor had already fled the country. But me? I wasn't running. I was rebuilding. Step 1 was reclaiming the estate. Step 2? Making their downfall public. But not yet. Because I wanted the whole world watching. I wanted sponsors pulling out of Victor's business. I wanted Evelyn's charity events cancelled. I wanted Paul's luxury real estate firm to watch investors scatter like rats. So I waited. And smiled. And scheduled the press conference. Because I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the story. If you've ever dreamed of revenge, let me tell you, there's nothing quite like walking into a room full of cameras, microphones, and reporters, knowing that everyone who tried to erase you is watching. And they have no idea what you're about to do. I didn't want just justice, I wanted spectacle. So I called it a public clarification. I didn't invite my siblings. Didn't even warn them. Just let the media spread it like wildfire. Caroline Wright to break silence on estate battle. Within hours, it was national news. The forgotten sister. The miraculous recovery. The billion-dollar inheritance. Everyone was curious. Everyone wanted to hear my side. And I was ready to give it, on my terms. I wore white. Not because I felt pure. Because I wanted them to think I was still that sweet, broken girl they left behind. I stood behind the podium in a downtown conference hall packed with reporters, the Wright Foundation logo glowing behind me, my foundation now. The same one Evelyn used to host her fraudulent galas under. The one Paul used for tax write-offs. The one Victor bragged about donating to, while siphoning the funds into his private retreat in Lake Como. And then I began. Thank you all for being here today. I know the past few weeks have brought confusion, speculation, and disbelief. But now, it's time for the truth. I could feel the cameras zooming in. Phones were recording. The live stream was already climbing into 6-digit viewership. I continued. My name is Caroline Wright. I am the only daughter of Arthur Wright. For 5 years, I was led to believe I was mentally unstable. I was told I had no claim to my father's legacy, that I had given it away during a breakdown I don't even remember. But that was a lie. A few gasps. Reporters scribbling faster. My siblings, Paul, Evelyn, and Victor, did not care for my recovery. They did not protect me. They orchestrated a medical assault on my memory, bribed doctors, falsified consent, and placed me in isolation. Also, they could forge a new will, steal my father's legacy, and call it charity. I paused. Let the silence spread like smoke. And here is the proof. I gestured. 2 massive screens lit up behind me. Emails. Transactions. Audio clips. Evelyn's voice saying, "She won't remember a thing, just keep the pills going." Paul laughing in a voicemail, "If she wakes up, we'll just show her a different will." Victor saying, "The inheritance is ours now. She's just a shadow." The room exploded. And then, the clinic footage. Grainy, but clear enough. Me strapped to a chair, confused. A nurse whispering instructions. The doctor injecting something into my fore. My mouth forming the word "why?" Silence again. One journalist stood up and shouted, "Are criminal charges being filed?" I looked straight into the camera. Yes. As of this morning, all 3 have been served. Boom. It was done. Phones were vibrating across the country. Stock in Paul's real estate firm nosedived in real time. Evelyn's sponsors began pulling out within the hour. Victor's passport was flagged before he could even pack a bag. But the final blow? I had requested one more thing. A live message from my father's attorney, reading the original will, again, out loud. Word by word. So the world could hear exactly how much he trusted me. Believed in me. Loved me. My voice shook, but I held my ground. For years, I believed I was broken. That I was crazy. That I had asked to forget. But now, I remember everything. And I won't be silenced again. The press cheered. Reporters cried. Someone shouted, "You're a hero." But I didn't smile. Because this wasn't over. The court case had just begun. The public believed me now, but the siblings? They still had secrets. And I was ready to dig them all out. They say when rats are cornered, they bite. But when liars are exposed, they do something even more pathetic, they try to rewrite the truth in real time. Less than 24 hours after my press conference aired, the Wright siblings went into damage control mode. And when I say damage, I mean absolute, screaming chaos. Evelyn was the first to crack. She showed up on a podcast the next morning, wearing a beige turtleneck and her fake pearls, blinking like a Victorian widow and saying, "Caroline is still healing. She misremembers events. I loved my sister. I still do. She almost had me, until she said this, and as for the inheritance, it was always our father's wish that we share equally." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Because while she was lying into a microphone, I was uploading the rest of the video footage. The part where she threatened the clinic nurse. Where she rehearsed what she'd say if I ever started remembering. The part where she opened the fake will on her laptop, read it aloud, and said, "She'll believe anything in this state." That clip hit the internet like a wildfire on gasoline. Evelyn trended under #PearlLiar by noon. Her charity's website crashed. Her donors fled. One of her gala photos got turned into a meme captioned, "She tried to erase her sister. God erased her income." Paul, meanwhile, went darker. He released a statement through his lawyer accusing me of manipulating mental health narratives for financial gain. Bold. Coming from a man who literally paid for my memories to be chemically suppressed. But it backfired hard. The clinic's former head nurse reached out to Lila anonymously, then agreed to testify. Turns out, Paul not only paid extra for full suppression treatment, he demanded they erase the will conversation specifically. He even gave them a script to repeat to me post-sessions. "You made the choice, Caroline. You wanted peace." Disgusting. We leaked that too. By the next day, Paul's Dubai investors were issuing statements. The luxury real estate firm he built off Dad's money? Blacklisted. Clients vanished. His name was removed from his own website. His passport? Flagged. And Victor, oh, Victor. My smug, silent brother who always thought he was smarter than the rest. He decided to go the legal route. Filed an injunction against me for defamation and public harassment. Claimed the documents were fabricated. Claimed I'd been coached by Lila. The judge didn't even blink. She scheduled an emergency hearing. Ordered both parties to submit all digital evidence, including device logs, original files, witness testimonies. What Victor didn't know. I had already subpoenaed the clinic's internal chat records. We found a message he sent on the day I was admitted. It read, "She's starting to piece things together. Get it done today. I don't care what it costs." You could hear a pin drop in court when that was read aloud. Victor's lawyer quietly excused himself, never returned. But the real humiliation came when the judge asked me a simple question, "Miss Wright, what would you like the court to do?" I said, calmly, clearly, "I want them to feel what they made me feel, powerless. And I want the truth sealed into every public record so they never get to change the narrative again." The judge granted full control of the Wright Foundation, Wright Enterprises, and all subsidiary assets, to me. And then? She set a trial date for criminal fraud. My siblings? They left the courthouse through the back door. But someone caught them on camera, Paul throwing his phone, Evelyn crying, Victor screaming at a journalist. That video went viral. Title? How to Lose $1 Billion in 3 Siblings. And me? I walked out the front doors, head held high. But inside, I wasn't celebrating. Because I knew something they didn't. One of them had a backup plan. One final lie waiting in the dark. And I was going to find it. I didn't find the recording on purpose. I found it because something felt off. It happened 3 days after the courtroom victory. I was in my father's old study, the one they had kept locked for years under the excuse that it was too painful to enter. When I unlocked it with his original key, yes, I had it, tucked into an old chess trophy I'd kept since childhood, the air inside felt untouched, like it had been waiting for me. And maybe it had. Everything was exactly where I remembered, his leather chair, the decanter of untouched scotch, the globe bar I wasn't allowed to spin as a kid. But something about the desk was wrong. The drawer wouldn't close all the way. When I pulled it open, I found an envelope, yellowing and marked with 2 words in my father's handwriting, for Caroline. Inside? A USB drive. No note. No instructions. Just that. I held it like it was sacred. I didn't plug it in right away. I made myself wait until midnight. I don't know why. Something in me needed silence. Darkness. Space. I sat alone in the study and inserted it into an old laptop. The folder opened with a single video file. Titled, If They Lie. I hit play. The screen flickered, and there he was, my father, staring into the lens. Not like in the legal footage. This wasn't official. This was personal. His voice was raw, tired, but unwavering. Caroline. If you're watching this, they lied. I froze. They tried to convince me not to name you. Said you were too soft. Too emotional. But I know the truth. You were always the only one who cared about this legacy for the right reasons. And I knew they would try to take it. Not because they wanted it, but because you had it. He coughed, then looked directly at the camera. Evelyn asked me to rewrite the will the day before I died. Paul offered me a peaceful death in exchange for equal shares. Victor, he threatened to expose old company records if I didn't comply. I recorded them. I saved everything. My heart slammed against my ribs. He leaned back and reached off screen, then pulled into frame a second USB drive. This is the real fire. This is the file that buries them. If they ever succeed in erasing your memory, if they ever fake your signature or change the story, you use this. Not to get revenge. Not to punish. But to remind them that the truth never dies. Tears were pouring down my face before the video even ended. Because that was the night I realized something that made my knees go weak. They didn't just steal from me. They tried to kill him. I called Lila at 1:13 a.m. She came immediately. We watched the video together. Her jaw clenched tighter with each sentence. "That second USB," she said, "we need to find it." Because if what he said was true, it held proof not just of theft, but of murderous intent. The next morning, I searched every inch of the study. Every book. Every drawer. The walls. The floorboards. And then I remembered the globe bar. He never let me touch it. Ever. I cracked it open, and there, nestled beneath the gin and vermouth, was a hollowed-out compartment. Inside? The second USB. Lila brought in digital forensic experts immediately. What we found made everything before this look like child's play. Audio of Evelyn saying, "Just up the dosage. If he dies, it's natural causes. We'll get the lawyers in place before the boat is cold. Paul, Dad's not changing the will. So maybe we don't give him a choice. Victor, slip something in his drink. He won't know. He's old, he's tired. And it's time." This wasn't just fraud. This was conspiracy to kill. And my father knew. He knew. He set the trap. He left the match. He handed me the fuse. All I had to do was light it. You ever watch someone who's spent their entire life pretending, finally run out of lies? That's what it looked like when Evelyn tried to flee the country, and the airport security tackled her to the floor in stilettos and a Chanel trench coat. But let me back up, because the days leading up to that arrest were the most surreal of my life. The morning after we uncovered the USB with my father's final evidence, Lila filed a formal motion with the court. This time, it wasn't about inheritance. This was bigger. It was attempted murder, conspiracy, and medical fraud. A multi-million-dollar cover-up, orchestrated by my own blood. The DA didn't hesitate. By the end of the day, there were 3 sealed warrants. One for each of my siblings. The police coordinated their arrests at dawn, but Evelyn got wind of it somehow. She always was slippery. She booked a 6:15 a.m. flight to Zurich, planning to disappear into some luxurious exile with a fake identity and, I assume, what was left of the charity money she hadn't yet been forced to return. But you see, I knew her patterns. Knew she couldn't resist first-class luxury. Knew she loved the Zurich lounge with the champagne cart. And most importantly, I knew she'd never suspect me watching. So I tipped off the press. By the time TSA stopped her at the gate, there were cameras waiting. One caught the exact moment she dropped her designer handbag and shouted, "I'm being set up. My sister's insane." Oh, the irony. Remember? That's what they said about me. Paul and Victor weren't so theatrical. Paul was arrested at his condo in Manhattan, barefoot, wearing silk pajamas and trying to delete files from his laptop. Too late. We already had them from the server backups his assistant didn't know he'd left synced to the cloud. Thanks, Brandon. Victor was found at a private dock in Rhode Island, trying to bribe a boat captain for a discreet trip to Canada. He offered 10 grand in cash. The captain offered to stall him with a beer while texting the sheriff. Cheers to that guy. All 3 were brought in separately, but the arraignment? That happened together. Side by side. Same courtroom. Same judge. Me sitting in the front row, spine straight, in my father's watch and mother's scarf, because he wanted justice, and she would have wanted me to look good doing it. The courtroom was packed. Media again. The world was watching. The charges read like a script from a Netflix thriller. criminal conspiracy to defraud a family estate, medical coercion and unauthorized experimental treatments, attempted suppression of inheritance rights, and the most damning, conspiracy to facilitate wrongful death. I expected denial, defensiveness, maybe even some crocodile tears. What I didn't expect? Paul cracked first. He stood up and said, "It was Evelyn's idea. She told us Dad was losing it. She said Caroline wouldn't fight back." Evelyn screamed across the courtroom, "You coward. You signed everything. I told you we should have sent her to Spain instead of the clinic." Victor just shook his head and muttered, "We should have finished it when we had the chance." And that was it. That was the moment the courtroom turned. Even the judge looked stunned. The DA requested full detainment until trial. Bail was denied. They were escorted out, Evelyn still shrieking, Paul sobbing, Victor glaring at me with those cold, entitled eyes. And I didn't flinch. Because I had already written my closing lines the night before. I stood outside the courthouse, facing the press, and said, "My name is Caroline Wright. And for 5 years, my own family called me crazy so they could rob me blind and erase my father's legacy. But now, the truth is louder than their lies. And they'll never silence me again." The microphones clicked. The crowd roared. But deep down, I wasn't done. Because while the court would handle the crime, I was going to handle the reputation. And that, my friend, is a whole different kind of justice. You ever hear someone speak so confidently, so smugly, thinking no one would ever hear what they really said in private? I did. 100 times. In whispers behind doors. In emails never meant for me. In calls they thought I'd never remember. And now? I was going to make the whole world hear them too. The law was doing its part. The siblings were behind bars awaiting trial. But their public image? Still intact in places. Their friends, what few they had left, called it a misunderstanding. Their PR teams released sanitized statements. Evelyn's fan base of charity ladies still wore pearls in solidarity. Paul's old clients whispered maybe I had exaggerated. Victor's crypto followers said it was a deep-fake psyop. So I did what any woman with a billion-dollar estate and a taste for vengeance would do. I created a website. Right lies. Calm, a front page, a countdown timer. Beneath it, you erased my memories. You buried the truth. So now I'll let the world remember, for me. The buzz started immediately. News anchors debated it. Reddit threads exploded. The Caroline files started trending. People speculated it was a hoax. A stunt. But when the timer hit 0, on a Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, there was no more speculation. There was only silence. Because the homepage updated to display a single video. 1 hour long. Titled, "The Truth They Thought I'd Forget." I narrated it myself. Calm. Collected. Dressed in white again, sitting in my father's old study, with the very chair Evelyn once said made me look weak. I spoke slowly. I was chemically silenced. But now, I will speak. And then the footage began. Clip 1, Evelyn to her assistant, "We just need her to forget long enough to make it legal. After that, who cares what she remembers?" Clip 2, Paul on a call, "Caroline was always the weakest link. Now we'll make her the silent one." Clip 3, Victor over drinks, "I don't feel guilty. She wouldn't even know what to do with that kind of money." But the worst? Clip 4, a recorded conversation in the clinic hallway, Evelyn laughing, "If she ever recovers, we'll say she's delusional." That's the beauty of it. No one believes women like her when they remember too late. The video ended with a black screen. Just one sentence in white text, "Believe women who remember." And the internet exploded. The charity women? Dropped Evelyn instantly. One posted a TikTok burning her event invites. Paul's old business partners launched lawsuits of their own, citing fraudulent conduct they now believed was deliberate. Victor's crypto empire collapsed in one night. Exchanges delisted his tokens. Sponsors ghosted. But I wasn't done. I opened the site's second tab, the receipts. Spreadsheets. Audio. Emails. Logs. Scans of fake documents they forged. Even the luxury purchases they made using caretaker funds while I was sedated. Everything was clickable. Downloadable. Indisputable. By Sunday, Right Lies. Com had 11 million hits. By Monday, Netflix called. But me? I sat in my kitchen, wrapped in a robe, drinking tea with Lila across from me. You could have just let the court bury them, she said. Why go public like this? I smiled. Not cruelly. Not even proudly. Just truthfully. Because they didn't just steal money. They stole my voice. And now, I'm giving it to every woman who's ever been told she was crazy when she was just remembering. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. And now the world knew the truth. But one final secret still remained. A letter from my father, marked to open only after justice was served. And what was inside would change everything again. You'd think after all that, after the trial, the takedown, the confessions, there'd be no more skeletons left. No more doors waiting to be opened. But when your life has been built on lies, sometimes the truth doesn't knock politely. It crashes in through the front door wearing your father's handwriting. It was a Tuesday when I found it. The courthouse had just finalized the transfer of every right asset into my name. The house was officially mine again. I was going through my father's old safe, now unlocked for the first time since his death, and beneath the old folders, stocks, war medals, and photographs, there it was. A sealed envelope marked in bold, slanted ink, Caroline, only open after the truth has come out. My fingers trembled as I held it. I sat down in his armchair, his smell still faint on the fabric, and for a few minutes, I just stared. I wasn't sure I was ready for another truth. But I opened it anyway. Inside, a letter. 3 pages. Written in the month before he died. My dearest Caroline, if you are reading this, then you have survived what I feared most. You remembered. You fought back. And for that, I am prouder than words can say. You were always the strongest, even when you thought you weren't. But there's one truth I never told you. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I didn't trust myself. Years before I met your mother, I was in love with a woman named Lydia. We were young. Poor. Madly foolish. We planned to marry, but when my first business failed, I left town, too ashamed to face her. I told myself I'd come back. But by the time I returned, she was gone. No forwarding address. No trace. 2 decades later, I received a letter, unsigned. Inside was a photo of a young man. A boy. He had my eyes. My chin. My temper, she warned. His name was Matthew. He was my son. I tried to find him. Tried for years. Private investigators. Ads. Nothing. Lydia never surfaced again. No birth certificate. No paper trail. But just before I died, I found him. He works at a community center in Chicago. He doesn't know who I am. He thinks he was abandoned. He's a good man, Caroline. A quiet man. He never asked for money. Never asked for anything. But I've left him something. A separate trust. A letter of explanation. And I've left you something too, the address of the man who, by blood, is your brother. What you do with it is your choice. But know this, blood may betray you, but love, chosen freely, can redeem more than you think. Always proud of you, Dad. I read it 3 times before I could breathe. A brother? Another sibling, but not like the others. Not a liar. Not a thief. Someone unknown. Unspoiled. A living, breathing piece of my father's unfinished life. I stared at the address. Just a simple building in South Side Chicago. No luxury. No empire. Just a name, Matthew Lane. I didn't tell Lila. Not yet. I needed time to process. To understand who I was now, knowing this. So that night, I booked a flight. Alone. No press. No reporters. No expectations. I needed to see him. Because for the first time in months, my story wasn't about revenge. It was about family. And this time, maybe I'd get it right. Chicago was gray when I landed. A thin drizzle coated the windows of the cab, blurring the skyline into soft shadows. The driver didn't speak much. Just nodded when I gave him the address and hummed along to some jazz station on the radio. It felt right, quiet, low, reflective. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. Not even Lila. This wasn't about the world anymore. It wasn't about cameras or courtrooms or inheritances. It was about me. And a man I'd never met, who shared half of my blood. The community center sat on a corner between a row of brick apartments and a fenced-in park where a few kids kicked a soccer ball in the drizzle. It was modest. Faded signage. Hand-painted murals. A bulletin board covered in handwritten notes and old event flyers. The glass door creaked as I pushed it open, and the warmth inside wrapped around me like a blanket. "Can I help you?" a woman at the front desk asked kindly, looking up from her crossword. I cleared my throat. "I'm looking for Matthew Lane." "Is he here?" She smiled. "You must be Caroline." I froze. "What?" She chuckled softly. "He said if a woman with your eyes walked in asking for him, I should tell you to wait in his office." I blinked, stunned. My voice barely worked. "He knew I was coming?" The woman nodded. "Said you'd come when you were ready. Said he's been waiting a long time." She led me to a small corner office, the door slightly ajar. I stood in the doorway for a moment, heart racing, and then I saw him. Matthew Lane. He was tall. Broad-shouldered. Early 40s maybe, with thick dark hair starting to gray at the temples and those unmistakable right eyes, stormy blue, like the sky before a downpour. He looked up from a file, smiled gently, and said, "Took you long enough, sis." I nearly forgot how to breathe. I stepped in slowly. You know who I am?" He nodded, rising to his feet. "Arthur told me. A year before he died. Sent me a letter. Said I had a sister. Said you were strong, but in danger. That he was afraid you'd be erased." I stared at him, stunned. "He told you before he died, but not me?" "He wanted to protect you," Matthew said softly. "He said if anything happened to him, you'd need someone who didn't want anything from you. Someone who could help, quietly." My knees gave slightly. I sat in the old armchair across from his desk, gripping the arms tightly. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because I saw the headlines," he said. "The press. The lies. Your so-called breakdown. And I thought, she's already fighting a war. The last thing she needs is another stranger with shared blood." I blinked away tears. "You watched all of it?" He nodded. "Every press conference. Every leak. Every chapter of your website. You were incredible." I let out a shaky breath. "I thought I was alone." "You were never alone," he said. "Not really. I just didn't want to be another person demanding space in your story. But now? Now the war's over. And if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of what comes next." I looked at him, really looked. There was no hunger in his eyes. No calculation. No performance. Just warmth. And waiting. You know, I whispered, I've spent so long burning down what they built. I forgot what it feels like to build something new. He smiled. Then let's build something they can't touch. Home was supposed to feel safe now. After everything, after the arrests, the press conference, the public reckoning, I thought the worst had passed. That the ghosts had been buried. That the knives were out of my back, and the house that raised me could finally just be a house again. But I was wrong. I got back from Chicago just after sunset. The flight was smooth. My heart was full of questions, yes, but also something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Matthew wasn't what I expected. He was better. Grounded. Honest. We'd made plans, casual, slow plans. Dinner the following week. A walk around the lake. A shared photo album we'd start building together. But all that serenity vanished the moment I stepped into my father's study. I hadn't even taken my coat off. The door was open. I knew I'd locked it. My hands were full of grocery bags, so I nudged it open with my elbow, humming some old jazz tune I'd heard in Matthew's car. But the second I looked inside, my breath caught. The desk drawers were open. The bookshelves disturbed. My father's favorite fountain pen, snapped in half. And in the center of his desk, where the globe bar used to sit, was a single sheet of paper. No envelope. No signature. Just 6 words, you weren't supposed to survive this. Everything inside me went cold. I dropped the groceries. The bag tore, and oranges rolled across the floor. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stared at the note, hands shaking. The ink was still fresh. The smell of it made my stomach churn. Someone had been here. Someone still wanted me gone. I backed out of the room, heart pounding, and ran straight to the security system monitor. My father had installed cameras in the study after a break-in years ago. I'd kept them on. Paranoia, maybe. Or instinct. And now? That instinct saved me. I scrubbed through the footage and found it. 2:17 p.m. The day I was in Chicago. A man. Hooded. Gloved. Slipped in through the side entrance. Moved straight to the study. No hesitation. Like he knew the house. He didn't take anything. Didn't search wildly. He just left the note. Calm. Intentional. Then walked out like a shadow. But here's what chilled me to the bone. As he turned to leave, the hood slipped for a split second. And I saw his face. Victor. Not behind bars. Not in jail. Victor. Free. Smiling. I called Lila immediately. She answered on the second ring. Victor's out, I said. That's impossible, she snapped. He's in federal custody. No, I whispered. He's here. I sent her the footage. She was silent for a long time. Then, we need protection. You're not safe. She called the authorities. Within the hour, 2 federal marshals were at the house. The footage confirmed it. Victor had been released on a clerical error. A delay in the extradition paperwork. A corrupt clerk, maybe. Or someone paid to make a mistake. Either way, he was gone before anyone noticed. Now he was back. And he wasn't done. He wasn't finished destroying what little of me still stood. But this time? I wasn't the same woman they drugged into silence. This time, I remembered everything. And I was going to make sure Victor never forgot who he was dealing with. Some women would have run. Moved out. Gone underground. But not me. Not this time. I'd already been erased once, lost years of my life to lies and needles and carefully constructed silence. And now the man who orchestrated it was free, roaming, smug enough to walk into my home and leave a note like I was still that sedated shell he used to whisper over in fake concern. Victor wanted me afraid. Instead, I made tea and began to build the trap. The first thing I did was upgrade every inch of security. Not just cameras, but motion detectors, thermal sensors, and triple-locked access to every room. The house was no longer a home, it was a stage. And I was going to script his final scene. But I needed bait. That's where the press came in. I called a reporter, Talia, who'd interviewed me after the trial. Young, sharp, fearless. I told her I wanted to give one last interview, filmed inside the house. A tribute to my father. A farewell to the old story. The war is over, I said. Time to move forward. She loved it. And more importantly? So would Victor. The media announcement went live 3 days later. Caroline Wright, sole heir of the Wright legacy, to speak out an exclusive home interview about healing, family, and the future. It trended in under 2 hours. I made sure to mention, very gently, that I would be revealing unreleased final documents from my father's estate. Lila raised an eyebrow when she saw the draft. You're taunting him. I smiled. I'm inviting him. The day of the interview came fast. I wore pale lavender. No jewelry. Soft makeup. The living room had been rearranged to face the study, where the cameras could catch the doors in the background. Talia and her cameraman arrived at 10 a.m., sharp, excited and clueless. I gave her the scripted questions ahead of time. Every single one of them designed to sound warm, hopeful, safe. But really? They were breadcrumbs. Victor had always been arrogant. He couldn't stand being excluded. And he hated that I won. So I fed his ego one bite at a time. I wish my brothers could have been part of this legacy, I said into the camera. Especially Victor. He was always misunderstood. Talia leaned in, eyes gleaming. Do you still love your siblings? I smiled softly, pretending to blink away tears. Yes. I still have hope. Maybe one day, he'll walk through that door and tell the truth. My eyes glanced, just for a second, at the study. It was subtle. But it was enough. Because I knew he'd be watching. He wouldn't be able to help himself. And just like I predicted, he walked in. It was surreal. Mid-interview. No knock. Just the creak of the door behind us. The cameraman froze. Talia blinked. And then, Victor Wright. Disheveled but grinning. Like he thought he was the twist ending. Caroline, he said, arms wide, you called, and here I am. My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't panic. It was performance. Victor, I said, my voice measured, I was hoping you'd show. He turned to the camera. Tell them the truth, Caroline. Tell them how you framed us. How you manipulated Dad before he died. I didn't answer. Because I didn't need to. The second he crossed the red rug in front of the study, the smart sensors triggered. A silent alarm rang straight to the marshals parked down the street. I'd cleared it with the authorities beforehand. If Victor entered the house while on fugitive status, the cameras rolling would serve as immediate evidence and probable cause. He kept talking. She's lying. She forged everything. You people worship her, but she's a fraud. Talia looked stunned. Victor, you're not supposed to be out of custody. He smirked. Neither was she supposed to survive. And just like that, he confessed. Out loud. On tape. To millions watching live. Because what Victor didn't know. The stream was airing in real time. He thought it was pre-recorded. He thought he could throw me off balance, accuse me, frame the narrative again. Instead, he confessed on national television. 3 minutes later, the marshals stormed in. Guns raised. Orders shouted. Victor didn't run. He just stared at me, stunned. You set me up, he breathed. I stood. No, Victor. You walked in. I just gave you the mirror. The house was quiet after they took him. Victor hadn't fought. Hadn't yelled. Just stared at me as they cuffed him and read his rights. It was the first time in his life he looked powerless. And maybe the last time I'd ever see him again. Talia and her cameraman left in stunned silence, mumbling something about history in real time. Lila called me every hour for the rest of the day, her voice part relief, part awe, part warning. The legal team says we've got everything we need now. This was the final nail, Caroline. We've buried them. But I didn't feel finished. Not yet. Because something about Victor's smile haunted me. The smugness. Like he still had a card tucked up his sleeve. Like even in chains, he was playing a longer game. I couldn't shake it. And then, 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. It wasn't the media. It wasn't a fan. It was her. Eva Delacroix. Victor's ex-wife. I hadn't seen her in years. She used to be a ghost in our family photographs. Stunning. Elegant. Always quiet at dinners, like she knew something none of us did. She left Victor years ago after a so-called amicable split. No kids. No drama. Just vanished. And now here she was, on my porch, trench coat soaked with rain, no umbrella, holding a small manila envelope in her trembling hands. Eva? I asked, stunned. What are you doing here? She stepped inside without asking. Closed the door behind her. Her face was pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I saw the broadcast, she said, voice hoarse. I saw what he did. And I think it's time you saw what he never wanted anyone to know. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a flash drive. No label. Just black plastic and silence. I looked up. What is this? Her lips trembled. Victor kept journals. Recordings. Insurance, he called it. In case the world turned on him. In case you ever grew a spine, as he used to say. The words made my stomach twist. Why now? I whispered. Because I kept quiet for too long, she said, eyes full of guilt. And I've lived with it. But seeing you fight, seeing you win, it reminded me that silence is just another form of betrayal. I took the flash drive into the study. Plugged it in. There were dozens of files. Dates. Titles. Voice memos. Video clips. Emails. The first one I opened was audio, Victor speaking to himself. Caroline's smart. Too smart. We should have just locked her up for good. But Evelyn got soft. Paul panicked. Me? I always planned for the long game. That's why I copied Dad's passwords. That's why I erased that second set of company records. No one will ever find them. And if they do, well, I've got worse on them. My pulse quickened. I clicked another. Eva thinks she left me. But I let her go. She knows too much. But she's harmless. She still thinks I just lied about the inheritance. She has no idea I doctored the clinic footage. No idea I blackmailed the doctor. Caroline doesn't know either. And if she does? She'll never prove it. I clicked faster. More files. More corruption. One video showed Victor in my father's study the night he died. Drinking from his decanter. Whispering to someone off camera, tomorrow it's done. The will's changed. And she won't remember a damn thing. No one will. Another file, an email chain between Victor and a man in Zurich, the same clinic that treated me. Payment receipts. Flight confirmations. A wire transfer with the subject line, Right Memory Protocol, Final Stage. But the last file? It stopped my heart cold. A single video, shaky and dim, labeled only, Matthew. I clicked. Victor's voice. Laughing. If Caroline ever finds him, it won't matter. He doesn't know the full story. He doesn't know what I did to him. Just like she doesn't know he was part of the plan all along. The screen glitched. But I caught the last words before it cut. They think blood means loyalty. But blood's the easiest thing to lie about. I stared at the screen, breath caught in my throat. Because in that moment, one terrifying thought settled in like a cold fog. Had Victor touched Matthew too? Had my one safe person been a target all along? Was my father's final secret another trap? I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. Victor's voice looped in my head like a curse. He doesn't know what I did to him. What did that mean? What could it mean? Matthew, my brother, the man who helped me feel human again, had been nothing but kind, grounded, sincere. He didn't want money. He didn't even want answers. He just wanted a sister. But Victor? He had always been 3 steps ahead. And if he'd reached into my past to manipulate me, who's to say he hadn't touched Matthew's too? By sunrise, I was on the first flight back to Chicago. I didn't call. I didn't warn Matthew I was coming. I needed to see his face. I needed to hear the answers before he had time to prepare them, just in case. The rain hadn't stopped in Chicago. The same silver-gray skies blanketed the city as I pulled up outside the community center. I stared at the front doors, that same chipped mural, and tried to steady my breath. Everything inside me screamed, this is different now. I walked in. The receptionist smiled again, same woman from before. Back so soon? I need to speak with Matthew, I said. Privately. She nodded, stood, and gestured me toward his office. I walked in without knocking this time. Matthew was sitting at his desk, going over paperwork. He looked up, surprised but not startled. Caroline, he said. I didn't expect you, so I cut him off. I need you to be honest with me. Right now. Did Victor ever contact you? His face paled. I saw the flicker. Not fear, recognition. He stood slowly. Close the door. I did. My fingers felt numb on the handle. I need to know, I said, hard hammering. Did he reach out? Did he use you to get to me? Matthew didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, staring out at the wet sidewalk, then back at me. Victor came to see me 2 years ago. The words hit like a punch. He showed up here. Unannounced. Said he was from some estate reconciliation group. I didn't know who he was at the time, he used a fake name. Just said he was looking for people possibly connected to the right family. Asked me questions. About my mother. About my past. I thought it was a scam. And then? I whispered. He left. I didn't see him again. Not until I saw him in your trial footage. That's when I realized it had been him all along. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? He turned back to face me. His eyes were soft, but steady. Because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I hadn't figured it out sooner. That I let him sit in this office and ask me about you. That I didn't recognize the trap. I searched his face for lies. But there were none. I didn't help him, Caroline, he said. I never gave him anything. But I think he knew something I didn't. I stepped forward. Like what? He hesitated. Then opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out an envelope. It was old. Yellowed. Postmarked from 23 years ago. I found this in my mother's things, he said. Right after she passed. It was addressed to her, but signed by Arthur Wright. He handed it to me. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter. Lydia, I'm sorry I left. I was a coward. But I never stopped thinking about you, or him. I want to make things right. I've told my family about him. About Matthew. They know. They don't like it, but they know. I want to bring you both into my life again. I want Caroline to have a brother. Please, let me try. Love, Arthur. The date? 2 months before my father's final stroke. The blood drained from my face. He told them, I whispered. He told Victor. Matthew nodded. I think that's why Victor came here. He wanted to know how much I knew. Whether I'd interfere with what they were planning for you. My hands curled into fists. So he decided to leave you alone, as long as you stayed out of the way. Matthew's voice was quiet. And I did. Until you showed up. Until I saw what they did to you. I looked at him, this man who had no reason to help me, no claim to my inheritance, no debt to my pain, and I realized something. Victor had tried to use Matthew the way he used me. But unlike me, Matthew never bent. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking. For not becoming like them. He smiled gently. You're my sister, Caroline. Not because of blood. Because of choice. And in that moment, I knew something with bone-deep clarity. The family I'd fought for wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one I was choosing now. The day of the trial felt like stepping back into a nightmare, but this time, I wasn't the confused woman gripping tissues in the gallery. I wasn't the woman with sedatives in her bloodstream or tremors in her voice. This time, I wore steel under my blouse, fire behind my eyes. And I was ready. Victor Wright versus the state. Charges: conspiracy, medical coercion, fraud, attempted memory manipulation, and unauthorized access to estate funds. Plus the newest charge, fugitive violation and intimidation of a protected witness. That witness was me. The courthouse buzzed like a beehive. Journalists lined the steps, whispering predictions. Supporters waved signs, some for justice, some still brainwashed enough to believe Victor was the victim. I didn't care. I had my proof. I had Lila by my side. I had Matthew watching quietly from row 3. The judge was sharp and unsentimental. The prosecution was ruthless. The defense team looked tired before opening arguments even began. Victor wore a navy suit too tight for his smugness and smirked like a man who thought someone had a backdoor left for him. And that was when I noticed him. A man sitting alone in the very front row. Not press. Not family. A stranger in a brown trench coat, dark-rimmed glasses, and hands that never stopped fidgeting with a silver pen. He didn't look at the trial. He looked at me. Not once. Not accidentally. But again, and again, and again. At first I tried to ignore it. Until he mouthed something. Just 3 words. Check your witness. My stomach dropped. I leaned toward Lila, whispering through clenched teeth, who's our first witness again? Janice Mayer. Former nurse at the Zurich clinic. She's our key timeline witness. Did she ask for security? She declined, Lila whispered. She said she wasn't worried. But now I was. Because just then, Janice took the stand, and my gut screamed something was wrong. She looked calm. Too calm. Her eyes glassy. Like someone playing a role. She swore in. Sat down. Began testifying. But her answers? Scripted. Sterile. Empty. She wasn't the woman who cried in my kitchen when she first admitted what they'd done to me. She wasn't the whistleblower who broke down while replaying audio of Victor's orders. She was a hollow shell, reciting vague details like she'd been reading from a government pamphlet. I turned cold. The prosecutor asked, Ms. Mayer, can you confirm that Victor Wright requested memory suppression treatment specifically for Ms. Caroline Wright? Janice blinked. Paused. Then said, no. I have no memory of that conversation. The courtroom gasped. The DA froze. I stood. Objection, the prosecutor roared, but the damage was done. Janice had flipped. Someone got to her. Someone paid her, or threatened her, to break the chain of truth. I turned sharply in my seat. The man in the front row was gone. Gone. Lila was already on her phone, whispering to her investigator. I heard her say, find out who the hell was sitting front row, left side, now. But my hands? They were already shaking. Because this trial wasn't going to be about evidence anymore. It was going to be about control. Victor saw my reaction and smiled, just barely. The smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. He didn't need to win the case. He just needed to shake the truth enough to make the jury question me. The judge called a recess. I walked straight out of the courtroom, heart pounding, and paced the empty hallway. And then I remembered something. The flash drive Eva gave me. The files I hadn't opened yet. The folder titled Insurance, Level 3. I pulled out my phone and messaged Lila. Tell the court we have new evidence. And this time, it speaks for itself. Because if Janice wanted to rewrite her truth, then I'd let Victor's own voice destroy her lie. Recess lasted 20 minutes. But it felt like an hourglass turned over with my future inside. I sat alone in the hallway, legs crossed, staring at the folder on the flash drive Eva gave me. Insurance, Level 3. A final category of digital poison. I hadn't opened it before because I thought I wouldn't need to. Because I believed truth alone would be enough. But Victor had changed the game again. And now? It was my move. Inside the folder were 3 audio files. The first 2 were incomplete, chopped snippets of voice memos, unfinished thoughts, background noise. But the third? Oh, the third. It was dated 3 months before the trial. Recorded on Victor's phone. It began mid-conversation, with a voice I didn't recognize at first. A woman's voice. And then I did. Janice. Janice, you said she was never coming back. That she wouldn't remember. You promised. Victor, she wasn't supposed to. That's the problem with memory drugs, sometimes the ghost comes back. Janice, I can't testify against her. They'll ask questions. Victor, you'll say you don't remember. You'll play the victim, Janice. I've wired the money. Keep the answers short. Keep your eyes dry. I stared at my screen, cold fury blooming in my chest. There it was. Victor coaching a witness. Tampering with the trial. And not just that, bragging about it. Victor, she thinks she's going to win. Caroline's always been sentimental. She still thinks justice is real. Cute, right? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I marched back into that courtroom with the fire of 10 lifetimes burning behind my eyes. Lila met me at the door. What is it? She whispered. I handed her the flash drive. Play this. In full. Now. She nodded once, the kind of nod you only give when you know the bomb you're about to drop will level the room. The judge returned. The bailiff called everyone to order. The prosecution stood and requested an emergency motion to enter new evidence. A private recording, Your Honor. Provided by the defendant's former spouse. Directly relevant to the integrity of our witness testimony. Victor's lawyer objected. The judge waved it off. Let's hear it. They dimmed the lights. Plugged in the drive. And let Victor speak for himself. The moment Janice's name came out of Victor's mouth, the courtroom cracked. Jurors leaned forward. Reporters started typing faster than their hands could keep up. Victor's smirk vanished. He sat frozen, arms clenched, staring at the floor. The audio played in full, his promises, his payments, his instructions. Every word clear. Every lie exposed. And the best part? His voice mocking the jury. Juries want emotion. Give them soft eyes, sad pauses, and they'll believe anything. When the audio ended, no one moved. No one spoke. Even the judge sat perfectly still. Then she turned to Victor, her voice like thunder. "Mr. Wright, you have just committed witness tampering, trial manipulation, and perjury in real time. In this court. In my presence. I am issuing an immediate contempt order and reopening the prosecution's evidentiary file." Victor opened his mouth. Closed it. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Outside the courthouse, the video went viral within hours. Someone leaked the full recording, probably one of the press pool. Headlines blared, "Victor Wright caught bribing witness, on tape the ultimate narcissist just undid his own defense she was supposed to forget, now she'll never be forgotten but for me." It wasn't about the headlines. It was about what came after. The judge turned to the jury and said, "This trial is no longer a question of guilt. It is a question of how deep the guilt runs." And I sat in silence. One hand folded calmly in my lap. The other gripping my father's watch, ticking softly. Because we weren't just winning anymore. We were burying him. They say courtrooms are where justice speaks. But sometimes, they're where ghosts come to settle their scores. The morning I took the stand, the air was thick. Not just with tension, but with something else. Anticipation. The kind that makes your hands sweat and your voice shake if you're not ready. But I was ready. Because this wasn't just about testimony anymore. This was the final chapter of my father's voice. And I was about to let it echo through the halls of justice one last time. The prosecution called me just after noon. I walked up slowly, deliberately, dressed in soft gray, my mother's brooch pinned at the collar, my father's watch ticking against my wrist. I didn't look at Victor. I didn't have to. I could feel his eyes on me like poison waiting to be swallowed. The oath was simple. But the moment I said I do, I felt the weight of 5 years finally settle into place. "Ms. Wright," the prosecutor began, "can you tell us, in your own words, what Victor Wright did to you?" I didn't blink. "He erased me," I said calmly. "He made the world believe I was unstable so he could steal what wasn't his. He paid doctors. Bribed nurses. Tampered with court documents. Lied to my face. And when I remembered the truth, he tried to make sure no one would believe me." Gasps filled the gallery. Pens scratched. Reporters whispered. But I wasn't done. "He didn't just steal money," I continued. "He stole my life." Victor's lawyer objected, "Emotional manipulation, Your Honor," but the judge waved her hand. "The witness may continue." And then Victor, of course, couldn't help himself. He stood. "Tell them the part you're leaving out," he shouted across the courtroom. "Tell them how you manipulated Dad. How he was senile when he wrote that final will." The judge banged the gavel. "Mr. Wright, sit down or I'll have you removed." But he wouldn't stop. He never could. "He didn't even love you, Caroline." Victor spat. "You were always the weak one. He pitied you, he never trusted you." And that was my cue. I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to enter one final exhibit into evidence." Lila handed me a sealed envelope. It was the one thing I hadn't shared yet. The letter. The real final letter. Dated 3 days before my father's death. Not to me. To Victor. I read it aloud. "Victor, I'm writing this because I see what you're doing. I see the whispers. The forging. The plans to move money that isn't yours. You think I don't know, but I do. I've known for years. I hoped Caroline's goodness would redeem you. I hoped her strength would make you rethink what you've become. But now I know it won't. If you continue down this path, you will lose everything. Not because of lawyers. Not because of me. But because Caroline will rise. And when she does, God help you. Father, the courtroom went silent. Victor sat down. Hard. His eyes wide. Mouth trembling. He looked like a man suddenly standing in the ruins of his own house, and realizing he'd lit the match himself. I folded the letter and handed it to the bailiff. Where did this letter come from? The judge asked. It was hidden, I said. Inside the lining of my father's old overcoat. It was meant for this moment. And I believe it proves intent. My father saw what was coming. And he left a message, for all of us. The judge stared at Victor. Do you deny this is your father's handwriting? Victor didn't speak. Not a word. Because now? There was no lie left to twist. When I stepped down from the stand, I didn't return to the gallery. I walked out of the courtroom. Into the light. Not because I was weak. But because the story was finally stronger than the silence. The courtroom was packed the morning the jury returned. 12 strangers. 7 women. 5 men. 48 hours of deliberation. 3 weeks of testimony. 5 years of stolen time. And one truth, ready to be carved in stone. I stood just outside the courtroom doors, hands folded in front of me, trying to breathe through a tide of memories. I remembered the clinic room. The hum of fluorescent lights. The nurse whispering, "You asked for this." I remembered Evelyn's voice feeding me fake timelines. Paul patting my hand while forging my signature. Victor's smirk. And now? They were all gone. Only Victor remained. And he was about to lose everything. All rise. The jury filed in. Their foreman, a quiet older man in glasses and a blue tie, held the paper like it was heavier than gold. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? Yes, Your Honor. In the matter of the state versus Victor Wright, on charges of conspiracy, medical coercion, financial fraud, witness tampering, and attempted manipulation of inheritance law, how do you find the defendant? He cleared his throat. Guilty. On all counts. The gavel slammed once. And just like that, the man who had tried to erase me, who had stolen my voice, who had turned my name into a lie, was finished. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just looked down, jaw clenched, as if finally realizing there was no exit left. No loophole. No one else left to bribe. His lawyer touched his shoulder. He shrugged it off. The judge began sentencing procedures, scheduling the formal date, discussing asset seizure, potential restitution, victim impact statements. But just when I thought the storm had passed, another wind began to howl. It came from Lila. She walked briskly into the hallway, file in hand, brows furrowed. I just received a document request from the original probate attorney, she said, eyes darting. There's something else. Something buried in the will. My heart thudded. What? She handed me the paper. It was scanned from the deepest corner of my father's safe deposit box. A codicil, a hidden clause, legally binding, quietly attached to the final version of the will but never reviewed during probate because it had been filed separately. The date? 3 days before he died. Same day as the letter to Victor. Lila read it aloud, voice sharp as ice. In the event that Caroline Wright reclaims her full legal inheritance through fraud investigation or court reversal, an additional trust shall be activated, one that is to be revealed only at the conclusion of sentencing. This trust shall contain instructions for a secondary asset distribution, contingent on the successful prosecution of any named heirs who acted in bad faith. My head tilted. Wait. A second trust? Layla nodded. And it names one person as its sole recipient. I blinked. Who? She turned the page. And there it was. Matthew Lane. I gasped. It wasn't about punishment. It was about redemption. My father hadn't just prepared for Victor's downfall. He'd prepared for what came after. The codicil continued, to Matthew Lane, my son by Lydia Delacroix, should Caroline restore what was taken, I leave the final right development portfolio, and sole ownership of the Riverview project. Why? Because the family who chooses to do right, deserves to build something better than what the rest destroyed. I stared at the page in shock. The Riverview project? That was everything. The crown jewel. My father's last venture. Untouched. Unclaimed. Victor never knew about it. But Matthew, he was the heir to its future. I called him that night. Told him everything. He was silent on the other end for a long time. Then said, I didn't ask for this, Caroline. I know, I whispered. That's why you deserve it. He flew in 2 days later. We signed the paperwork together. And as we stood outside the empty development site, a vast stretch of green and steel and potential, I took his hand. For once, I said, the right person won. He squeezed my fingers gently. No. We did. It was sentencing day. The last time Victor would sit in a courtroom with a view of the sky. The last time he'd wear a suit instead of prison gray. The last time he'd pretend to be powerful. Because after this, he'd be nothing more than an inmate number with a broken legacy. The courtroom buzzed like a live wire. The press was back. The cameras were ready. And the gallery was full. Everyone wanted to witness the final reckoning of Victor Wright, the man who once manipulated memory, silenced truth, and tried to bury his sister alive in a lie. But no one was more ready than me. Victor was already seated when I walked in. Shackled. Pale. His smirk was gone, replaced by a kind of hollow defiance, like a man still waiting for a secret trapdoor to open beneath him. There wasn't one. He scanned the room for allies. There were none. Even Paul and Evelyn, disgraced and bankrupt, had chosen not to appear. The judge entered. Gavel down. This court has reviewed all relevant documentation, recordings, witness statements, and criminal activity. We find the defendant's actions to be of the highest degree of intentional fraud, cruelty, and psychological manipulation. In light of this, the court imposes the maximum sentence allowable under state law. She paused. Then spoke the number. 35 years. No parole. No early release. A gasp rippled across the room. Victor's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Not yet. Then the judge looked at me. Ms. Wright, do you wish to deliver your victim impact statement? I stood. Walked slowly to the front of the courtroom. Turned not to the judge, but to Victor. And I began. You once told me I was too soft, I said. That I couldn't survive the world you were building. That kindness was weakness. That memory was a curse. But now? I smiled. You were wrong. You stole 5 years from me. My voice. My autonomy. My identity. And you thought no one would notice, because you wore a suit and smiled for the cameras. You convinced the world I was broken. I stepped closer. But I remembered. I reclaimed everything. And now, I'm not broken. I'm free. Victor shifted in his seat. And for a long time, I thought this day, this moment, was what I wanted most. Justice. Revenge. Watching you fall. But standing here now? I shook my head. I realized something. I turned back to the judge. My voice lowered. And then, my final line, Your Honor, I don't want Victor Wright to remember what he did. I want him to forget the man he once pretended to be. Because forgetting is what he tried to do to me. And no punishment is harsher than losing yourself. The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing. Victor's face collapsed, not with rage, but with something worse. Recognition. He knew what I meant. He knew he'd never rebuild from this. Not in the public eye. Not in his own mind. Not even in the mirror. I stepped down. The judge banged the gavel once more. It was over. Official. Final. Written into law. Victor Wright would spend the rest of his life locked behind the same kind of silence he once forced onto me. And me? I walked out of that courthouse and into the sunlight. No handcuffs. No cameras chasing. Just wind. And breath. And peace. The house was quiet that morning. Not silent like it used to be, haunted by forgetting, but quiet in a way that felt earned. Real. Like breathing after holding it in for too long. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, catching the edges of the white ceramic mug in my hands. There was no trial to prepare for. No lawyers to call. No reporters to dodge. Just tea. And a letter on the table, postmarked Chicago. It was from Matthew. I smiled before even opening it. His handwriting was neat. Careful. Like someone who still respected paper. It read, "Caroline, you did it. You didn't just win. You restored. You took what they tried to destroy, your name, your truth, your memory, and turned it into something none of them could rewrite." The Riverview project broke ground this morning. I signed the first contract with a local women's shelter. The land that was once built on corruption will now build hope. And it's because of you. Because you remembered. Because you fought. Because you refused to stay silent. I'm proud to call you my sister. See you next week. Bring that tea I liked. The one that tastes like lavender and a little revenge. Love, Matthew. I pressed the letter to my heart, eyes burning. Not with sadness, but with something I hadn't let myself feel in years, joy. Because this was never just about me. It never was. It was about every woman who's ever been told she was imagining things. Every woman who's ever been sedated with kindness, silenced with legalese, erased by people who said they loved her. It was for the women who didn't forget, but were forced to pretend they had. And now? It was our story. I logged into my website, writelies.com, and posted one final video. Me. In my father's old study. Calm. Whole. Hi. My name is Caroline Wright. You might know my story by now. But this last part? This one's for you. If someone's made you feel like your memories are unreliable. If they've called you dramatic, delusional, confused. If they've ever said you don't remember it right, then let me say this, you do. And no matter how long it takes, no matter how many people you have to stand up to, the truth doesn't fade. It just waits. Like I did. So when you're ready to remember who you are, I'll be right here. I hit upload. Closed the laptop. And finally, stepped outside. Not as a victim. Not as a survivor. But as a woman who remembered. And who would never, ever be forgotten again. If you've ever been silenced and called it love, or told your memories didn't matter, please know this story was for you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you felt seen today, please like, share, and subscribe my channel.